Who is the most improved player on the Buffalo Bills? I've got thoughts on that and a whole lot more today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, folks, welcome in. It's time for Herd Mentality, the weekly episode where you control the discussion, and we've got a lot of good stuff to get into today. We'll talk about the most improved player on the team, some Josh Allen stuff, the start streak, the sacks that he doesn't take, all kinds of stuff. Kyer Elam, special teams, Joe Brady versus Ken Dorsey, and also I'll close out today's episode with a bit of a New Year's message for you as we come out of 2024 into 2025. And I also start year 7 of hosting this podcast. So we'll have a moment of reflection at the end. But we start with this question from Wagon Circler. And Wagon Circler is part of our Discord community. And they put a message in there this week that suggested that I talk about who the most improved player on the team is and who I thought that would be. And we had a great discussion in the Discord channel and lots of players that you can evoke. I mean, plenty of good candidates that you can consider who's the best, who's the most improved player on this roster. And I'll give you my top 4 candidates, and I have 2 on offense, 2 on defense. I'd love to hear from you. If you have thoughts on this, make a comment in the YouTube channel and let me know what you're thinking. But I think it's down to these 4 players. On offense, Spencer Brown and James Cook. On defense, Dorian Williams and Taylor Rapp. Let me talk about each one of those players, and I'll tell you who my pick is. Offensively, I mentioned Spencer Brown and James Cook. We'll start with Spencer Brown. Obviously, a big step forward last year. He's even better this year. He's taken another big step. And for Spencer Brown last year, there were still moments and games where they gave him some help, right? You got a little bit of a tight end that's going to chip on the end. Running back's going to help a little bit. Not anymore. Spencer Brown plays on an island. And he's a lot more involved as a puller this year, and the success has been terrific. So, big step last year, another big step. I think Spencer Brown is firmly a top 5 right tackle in the NFL. James Cook, maybe statistically, the yardage numbers aren't quite what they were last year for James. Obviously, the touchdowns are crazy good. But James Cook's a better player this year. And I think his vision has been so much better. Not that his vision was bad last year, but there's a decisiveness with him, his ability to feel the cutback and get to it, his vision in the hole, really, really good. And less issues with drops, right? That was a problem last year. He dropped a bunch of big passes. Haven't really seen that this year. And I think he's just come in with a more of an intent with how he carries the football. He's never going to be a great yards after contact guy, but he's better this year because I think he's more decisive. He sets up the tacklers better, and he sees the field even better. So those are my 2 candidates on offense. Defensively, Dorian Williams and Taylor Rapp. Let me start with Taylor Rapp. I thought Taylor Rapp got better and better throughout last season and really finished the year on a high note and started to make an impact. And he came into this year as, the starter. The Bills signed him to a 3-year extension, and he's come in and played well. I think he's taken away the football. He's been a great tackler. He solidified things. The defense is clearly better when he's on the field. We got a taste of some of that when he missed a little bit of time this year. I think Taylor Rapp has come in and not just come in as a passable starter, right? A kind of a get-by guy, but a player that you're genuinely happy is starting for the team. I think his impact has been obvious. But my pick for the most improved player is Dorian Williams. And I think when you just consider what they were last year to what they have shown this year, and that percentage of increase, to me, it's Dorian Williams. I like Dorian Williams last year as a fast, physical player, urgent. You loved all that. But mentally, I just didn't think that he was a playable guy. And the Bills agreed with me. You remember the playoffs? They're signing A.J. Klein off the street before they're putting Dorian Williams on the field. He was a concerning player. The processing was a mess. This year, I think you can argue that he's been a reasonably good starter next to Terrell Bernard, has made an impact. The processing blunders are way less. Still a developing player. He still has plenty to prove, but the growth from what he was last year to what he is this year, I don't think there's a bigger discrepancy than what you'll get from Dorian Williams. Again, from, hey, I don't know that this guy is playable because the processing errors are so big, to I like when he's on the field. And I'm excited to see how he continues to develop and evolve and get opportunities for this defense. So that's my choice, Dorian Williams. Let me know yours. And again, there's lots of other good candidates. I got it down to those 4. And I thought Dorian Williams was the guy that showed the most growth. Next one comes from Bobby, who says, listening to the Friday podcast, when you said Josh Allen got away with more than he did with the Lions than he did against the Patriots, does that contribute to the fact that Gerard Mayo knows Josh Allen more than Dan Campbell? Yeah, I think so. And I think in terms of an approach, Josh Allen played New England a lot like he did against Detroit. And obviously, very, very big difference in those results from Josh Allen. The Detroit game, he was excellent. And against New England, I thought there was a lot of issues, and it certainly wasn't his best performance. But I do think a lot of that does come back to familiarity. You know, Dan Campbell, that's his second time going up against Josh Allen. First time since Thanksgiving in 2022. For Gerard Mayo, he specifically has game planned against Josh Allen 9 times entering that game as an assistant coach, and certainly other coaches that have also been part of those game plans, and players that are more familiar with going up against him. And the weather was better, right? Obviously, Ford Field, indoors. It was a very, very cold day in Orchard Park. And then also, I think Detroit was just very stubborn with how they chose to play defense. They stayed in that base defense with objectively bad linebackers. I think they've already released two of the linebackers since that game, and they just kept keeping them on the field and asking them to play. And it was just a really tough assignment, where New England maybe doesn't have as good of talent as Detroit, but I thought they did a better job of using their personnel and, you know, using Marte Mapu as this like X Factor chess piece, and kind of taking away from some of the issues that they had at linebacker. So I think all of that kind of played into it. But obviously the Bills win both games, and Josh Allen's contributions were very, very different in each of them. But I do think the familiarity piece played a lot into that. Bobby had a second question. He said, considering the Bills winning Sunday, and of course they beat the Jets, and so this happened, do they start Josh Allen so he can keep his record of most starts and let him hand it off to James Cook a couple of times and sit on the bench for the full game? Or do they let him sit on the bench for the full game? We already know this answer. Josh Allen's going to start against the New England Patriots to keep his start streak intact. And I 1,000,000% support that decision. Not even a thought to me that Josh Allen wouldn't start this game. Now, he's not going to play a ton. Go in there, start the game, maybe play the first series and get out of there. But this consecutive start streak is important. Josh Allen right now is at 114 consecutive starts. The next closest in the NFL for a quarterback, Jared Goff at 53. That's notable. He's got more than double the amount of consecutive starts than the next closest quarterback in the NFL. You're seeing backup quarterbacks used all the time in the NFL. Record-breaking numbers of quarterbacks starting. And Josh Allen's logged 114 consecutive starts. And you know what? The conversation with Josh Allen has been really since he's entered the NFL, you know, can he be durable? Can he sustain this level, this style of play, and be available for the team? Well, the answer is yes, emphatically. And it's important. It's a statement. It's a slap in the face to anybody who thinks that Josh Allen is going to have durability issues. He's been the most durable quarterback in the NFL by chasm. It's important. It should be important. He should go out there and start this football game. I also think James Cook should play, and I hope that he gets the 19 yards necessary to get to 1,000 rushing yards this season. You know, I know that there's risk involved with that, but these guys work extremely hard, and these statistical feats matter. They absolutely matter. And James Cook has an opportunity to have back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons. He's earned that opportunity. He's earned the right to go after that if he wants to. He needs 19 yards. Now, I do think there are some players that should sit inactive. You get to have 7 inactive players. My picks would be Dion Dawkins, Greg Rousseau, Christian Benford, Terrell Bernard, Taron Johnson, Ed Oliver, and Connor McGovern. Those would be the 7 players that I would have inactive on Sunday. Call up a couple guys from the practice squad. You can only elevate 2 and figure it out from there. But I think that the Bills should be intentional and are being intentional about Josh Allen starting, and I hope that James Cook gets a chance to get those 19 yards and log back-to-back 1,000-yard rushing seasons. All right, coming up on the other side of it, I want to get into some conversation about Josh Allen and all the sacks he doesn't take, little Joe Brady, Ken Dorsey comparison, and I'll also remind you of the contest that we're running. So, folks, be sure to stick with us. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. And FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a win. I love betting on which players will hit the over on their stat projections. I love building parlays. I love picking which teams will cover the spread. It's thrilling. And not only can you bet on who will win the game, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points each team will score, and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, folks, we announced this yesterday, but we're running a contest this week on the podcast. All you got to do is go to the YouTube video and comment "Go Bills." That's all you got to do. And we're going to have a drawing, and the winner will be able to claim a premium hoodie from the Herd Mentality Shop. I have one on right now. This is my favorite design from the Herd Mentality Shop. I'm wearing it right now in the YouTube video. Premium hoodie. It's Champions. It's a very, very high quality hoodie. We'll send you one for free, and you can pick out any design that you want. So we have some stuff on there that maybe there's not a hoodie option. We'll get you a hoodie, whatever design you want from the Herd Mentality Shop. So check it out, herdmentalityshop.com. Your choice, premium hoodie. All you have to do is comment "Go Bills" on this YouTube video. And also, if you want to check out the Herd Mentality Shop, you can go to herdmentalityshop.com, or there's a link in today's show notes to take you right to it. So comment "Go Bills" right now and get in on this contest. Next one comes from TRJP in our Discord channel, the Herd Mentality Discord channel. And they were just creating some conversation, and I turned it into a herd mentality question. So this is what they said. I wonder if Joe can give us the percentage to the lack of sacks, how he would split that up, referring to Josh Allen and being the least sacked quarterback in the NFL. What percentage is offensive line? What percentage is Josh reading the pocket? What percentage is other? So let's talk about this. Josh Allen's only been sacked 14 times this year. That's the lowest of any starting quarterback. And he's only lost 63 yards on those sacks. I think just as impressive as I am, or just as impressed as I am with the 14 sacks, only losing 63 yards is really impressive. Really impressive. Josh Allen has the best, and when I mean best, I mean he has the lowest pressure to sack conversion rate in the NFL. Only 8.2% of pressure on Josh Allen results in a sack. That's so good. Jordan Love is number 2 at 10%. Lamar Jackson's number 3 at 13.3%. That's a comfortable lead for Josh Allen. So Josh Allen not getting sacked, not allowing pressure to turn into sacks, and certainly not losing much yardage due to sacks. So what I'm going to do now is trying to give you like why I think that is. And we're going to do that through the lens of plurality. That's hard to say, Bruce Nolan. I can't even do it. Plurality pie. I'll never try that again on this podcast, I assure you. So Bruce Nolan, after every Bills game on the Bruce exclusive podcast, he dishes out pie and he attributes blame, right? For if the Bills win the game, these are the people, 20% Josh Allen, 15% whatever player coach. He does this. So I'm going to do this for Josh Allen and not getting sacked. 51% to Josh Allen. I think he's the most responsible for this. It's his ability to read the defense, get the ball out of his hands, know where his answers are. He's the guy that's in these moments making those decisions. I think it's mostly Josh Allen. Not only that, but also his ability to avoid pressure and not get sacked. So Josh Allen, 51%. I'm going to give 10% to Joe Brady. He's the offensive coordinator. He designs the scheme. He calls the plays. He's the one that puts the players in the positions. I'm also giving 10% to Aaron Cromer, the Bills offensive line coach, who I know has an active role in not only the run game design, but the pass protection schemes. And I think this is something that collaboratively they've grown a lot over the last few years. I've had criticism towards the Bills protection schemes, and I think I've said this. If you've listened to this podcast for years, you know that I said, hey, I think that the protection scheme fails more than the players do. And I think they've really got this solidified to make sure that they're schematically sound with how they choose to protect. I give 20% to Spencer Brown and Dion Dawkins. Those guys it's an elite pair of offensive tackles. When's the last time you watched the Bills play and you're like, man, these edge rushers are killing us? It doesn't happen because Spencer Brown and Dion Dawkins are an elite pair of NFL tackles. They get the job done, and they're on an island. They don't get help. They're on an island. They get it done. I'll give the other offensive linemen 5%, the middle 3%, and then I'll give the other offensive players 4%. You think about Ty Johnson as a pass protector. The receivers need to be able to read the defense, and if they're hot, they need to make themselves available. So they get some love there too. But 51% Josh Allen, 10% Joe Brady, 10% Aaron Cromer, 20% Spencer Brown and Dion Dawkins, 5% other offensive linemen, 4% other offensive players. Rich says on the All-22 review video, you briefly touched on how Joe Brady's schemes better utilize the Bills players versus Ken Dorsey. At some point, could you go into greater detail? The win numbers and the point totals clearly suggest a rather big improvement, but can you pull out the differences that can be attributed solely to Brady and not to personnel, opponent, and other factors? It's a great question, and I think I can simplify this in a way that will make sense. Ken Dorsey, his offensive scheme is fine. It's fine. And that's what, if you remember the discourse surrounding Ken Dorsey and like, hey, the numbers are good, but Josh Allen's not playing as well. It just doesn't look right. It's disjointed. What's going on here? And I said, look, I don't think that this is a bad scheme. And I had Ben Solak come on the podcast, and he's like, the scheme's fine. They didn't have a bad scheme. It's just a hard scheme to run and not necessarily one that favors Josh Allen and the receivers. Ken Dorsey did a good job of building in answers to everything. There's always answers. If they're in zone, what zone they're in, if they're in man, if they're going to have a pressure look, the answers were always there, but it required every single player to be on the same page. And if everyone's on the same page, everyone will know the answer and what to get to, but it's too much. It's just too much. And hey, if they give you this coverage rotation, your eyes should be to the right side of the field and you should throw this ball. And if the receiver sees it the same way, they'll be in the right spot and they'll be open. It's just too much. Joe Brady has simplified a lot of that. The route combinations, the spacing, the sequencing, it's just better. It's no longer, hey, everybody see it the same way. And if so, this is where the ball should go. You're running concepts. And there's a lot more to it in terms of reading out a progression from right to left or left to right, and then very easily seeing, okay, you're number one, no. Number two, no. It's all the same side. Okay, number three, we're coming back across the field, but that's an in-breaking pattern into Josh Allen's line of sight. Where for Ken Dorsey, it might be, well, if it's zone, you need to look left. If it's man, you need to look right, and hopefully the receivers are on the same page. I think all of that leads to a more cohesive play and execution because it's not everyone doesn't have to read and adjust all the time. It's, hey, we're running this play. This is the concept. And then it works together cohesively for Josh Allen with his sequencing. I can't tell you how many times, if you've been listening to this podcast, you know how many times I say, I don't really know why Josh Allen's eyes were there. I don't know why this receiver was there. Two players in the same space. The spacing is off. And now I don't ever say those things, do I? I say things like, I'm really satisfied with how Josh Allen approached this game. His eyes were in the right place. He made great decisions. I think it's because of the infrastructure scheme-wise. Next one here comes from Bob, who says, can you explain what goes into being a good special teams player? You've said that Kyer Elam doesn't play special teams, yet I think a cornerback who should have speed, tackling, and tracking skills would be well-suited for special teams. This is a great question because we keep going back to this. Kyer Elam is inactive when he doesn't start because he doesn't play special teams. Jamarcus Ingram does. Jamarcus Ingram has solidified himself as a jammer on the punt return team. He's a gunner on the punt team. He plays all the special teams. And obviously the Bills don't really feel the same way about Kyer Elam because when he doesn't start, he's inactive. So what makes a great special teams player? I'll break it down to three things. Number one is embracing it. Right? If you're a special teams player, that means you're probably not a starter. So you have to embrace it. This is your role. This is how you have the opportunity to make an impact, and you need to be a great steward of that opportunity. I'm not saying Kyer Elam doesn't embrace it, but you could talk yourself into that being true with him being a first-round pick that probably feels slighted as a guy that doesn't start. Probably not putting the same amount of effort into the special teams as he is playing corner. Number one, you have to embrace it. And that's an assumption. Don't twist my words there. I'm saying maybe there's a chance of that. I don't know for sure. Number two is there's a mindset involved with the style of play. Special teams, think about a punt return. Those are open field plays. Even I know the kickoff and kick return, it's a little bit different now, but still open field, full speed collisions. You know, you got to have some kind of crazy in you to play special teams, right? It's a different type of mindset. Open field, it's physical, full speed, right? You gotta embrace the role, and you have to have the right mindset to execute in those moments. And then there's the technique and physicality, and okay, you have to connect with moving targets and space to block. You got to be a good open field tackler. And for Kyer Elam, the big knock on him coming out of Florida wasn't necessarily that he was better suited to be a press man corner and didn't have a ton of experience in zone. That's not the biggest thing. The biggest gripe that a lot of people had was, I don't know what kind of tackler and run defender this guy is. I think he's been pretty good as a run defender and tackler in the NFL, but you can see how some of those warts could creep up and make him a lesser special teams option. And so the UDFA out of UB that's been on the practice squad, that's scratching and clawing for every opportunity that he can get, sometimes those guys are just the better options for special teams because of what goes into being a great special teams player. All right, coming up on the other side of it, we're going to talk about a lot of things, including my thank you message for New Year. Folks, be sure to stick with me. It's playoff time, and if you're like me, you want to make the most of these final weeks of football action. That's where PrizePicks comes in. If you love football and want a chance to win real money while watching the games, PrizePicks is the place for you. It's the best place and the best way to turn your sports opinions into cash with daily fantasy player projections. With PrizePicks, you simply pick more or less on player stats like total passing yards or rushing touchdowns, and for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. You can make your picks in less than 60 seconds, and whether you're looking for a flex play to boost your payout or want to cash out quickly, PrizePicks has you covered. And with over 10 million members and billions in winnings, it's clear that people are loving this platform. I've been playing for a while now, and I'm having a blast. It's so easy to use, and I love how fast the payouts are. Seriously, I've gotten paid out in as little as 15 minutes when my picks hit. Plus, the weekly promos like Taco Tuesday discounts and even more value, add even more value to your lineups. Here's a special offer for Locked On listeners. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's PrizePicks. Run your game. Download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. Run your game. Okay, the next one today comes from Mike. Mike's got a two-parter here. Says, what is your process when looking at film clips, deciding which ones to share on the All-22? Are you looking to explain what happened on a big play? Are you going into it with a certain list of questions that you want to answer, or just let it happen organically as you watch the tape? To borrow a phrase, I love the sausage, curious how it's made. So Mike is part of our community where you can get the all 22 film breakdowns. If you're in our Substack or our Subtext, you get a film file from me. It was 50 minutes long coming out of this this Jets game of me breaking down plays. And so you never know what plays you're going to get. So the question is, how do I choose? Well, I always try to pick the big plays, turnovers, tackles for loss, sacks, touchdowns. You're going to get those in there. I'm going to break those down. I also look for themes. How can I illustrate in a single play something that's happened multiple times to show you things that I'm going to talk about in the All 22 Review podcast. Buzzy players. I know people are interested in Matt Milano, Cole Bishop. I try to show those types of players. And then also the most important thing is as it speaks to me. As I sit down on Monday morning, I clear my whole day to spend it in the tape. And as I'm going through it, I think to myself, would this be interesting? Is this a teachable moment? Can I show something that I'm talking about a lot on the podcast to kind of give that visual evidence of what I mean? And so all of that kind of comes together. I guess the best way to say it is big plays and then organically what happens. And then at the end of it, I don't know, it's either 30 to 50 minutes of film breakdown, and I send it out to everybody. So thanks for being part of it, Mike. That's how the sausage is made. And if you want to be part of it, folks, join the Locked On Bills subtext community or the Substack. There's links in today's show notes, and you can be part of that. Two-parter here from Mike. The second part is I absolutely love Matt Milano. He's one of 3 current players that has a jersey that I own, a challenger for my top 10 list of favorite all-time Bills. But given the Bills' cap situation, multiple players to extend, his age, an injury history, and the emergence of Dorian Williams, you think it's a possibility that they consider cutting him in the offseason? So let me start by saying this, and I know that maybe a couple weeks ago I was in on, I think Dorian Williams should play over Matt Milano. I'll say this, the Jets game was a major step for Matt Milano. I felt like I was watching Matt Milano to an extent. So I like the trajectory there, and I could understand trusting him as the experienced player in the scheme over Dorian Williams in the playoffs. And when, you could certainly use Dorian Williams as a third linebacker. So I want to say right now that I'm pulling back a little bit on that. I think that Matt Milano should be the guy next to Bernard. Secondly, I don't think the Bills have a good opportunity to get out of this contract. If the Bills cut him in the offseason, it's $17 million in dead cap and a $1 million cap reduction. That doesn't make any sense. You're not going to do that. If they cut him in the offseason and designate him as a post-June 1st cut, which the Bills did with Tre'Davious White, you get $6 million in dead cap in 2025, $11 million in dead cap in 2026, but you do get $9.9 million in cap savings in 2025. I think your best path forward here is to keep Matt Milano. I just don't think there's a great opportunity to get out of this deal. I don't want to deal with $11 million in dead cap space in 2026 so that we can get $9.9 million in 2025 while also accumulating $6 million more in 2025. I don't want it. I don't want that $17 million in dead cap. Just keep Matt Milano, and I don't think he's cooked. I don't think he's cooked. Bills WZA says, with Week 18 essentially being a bye week and a number of Bills backups likely to play, thought it was a good time to take a look at the Bills practice squad for players in the pipeline. Is there anyone on the practice squad you are particularly intrigued about or have high hopes for in the future? I'm intrigued by Mike Edwards, the offensive lineman, given his measurables. What are your thoughts? And Mike Edwards is a good call out. That dude's monstrous, right? He's a massive human being. He's got a great offensive line coach, and Aaron Cromer. I think the 2 players for me that are most interesting off the practice squad, and I think there's a lot of candidates. Richard Garage is interesting. Mike Edwards is interesting. Frank Gore, Zach Davidson. Those are good names. For me, I look at Daquan Hardy and Lewis Seen. Daquan Hardy was a draft pick this past year out of Penn State. I think he's a better corner than people think, right? He's kind of drafted to be a returner, but I think his corner tape both at Penn State and even in the preseason I thought was really good. I enjoyed watching him at training camp, and I think there's a path for him maybe to be a Cam Lewis type player for this team, maybe be a legit depth player behind Taron Johnson. He's an interesting guy to me. And then, of course, Lewis Seen, a former first-round pick of the Vikings not that long ago. Maybe he doesn't have a future at safety, but as a hybrid linebacker, as a guy that has every attribute that you look for in a core special teamer, he's at least interesting to me, and I'll be curious if he's back on a futures deal. And what the Bills can unlock there. And they elevated him last week against the Jets, and he was inactive, which the Bills do all the time because that gives him 3 weeks of game checks. And that was definitely a good indicator that, hey, we value what you've done. We like you. And here's a bone, right? The Bills did that with Lewis Seen. All right, it's time for the thank you, Happy New Year message. And I do just want to say that. I'm recording this on December 31st, New Year's Eve. This will be the Wednesday podcast. I tried to, since it's a holiday, I try to get the Wednesday podcast done as quickly as possible. So that way you just kind of have a runway to play it whenever makes sense for you, as I know people have different things going on with the holiday. But Happy New Year. And January, this January, middle of the month, will be my completion of 6 years on this podcast being the host of Locked On Bills. I'm starting year 7 in January. And as we come out of Christmas, as it's now New Year's, obviously a great opportunity to reflect. And every time that I reflect on my career here on Locked On Bills, just gratitude is thank you. That's what comes out of me. I'm very humbled and thankful for all of the support. Bills Mafia has been so good to me, and I'm so thankful to that. And the podcast is doing really, really well. We're consistently ranked in the top 25 in the football podcast charts. So football podcasts, we're in the top 25 as a team-specific podcast. I'm very proud of that. You look at the other podcasts, it's national podcasts with, big names hosting them. And I'm just a Bills fan with a podcast, and we get to rank in the top 25. I didn't play in the league. I didn't coach in the league. I've never scouted. I've never worked for a team. I'm a fan with a podcast. I love this team. I love talking about it. And we get to be there in that top 25 with former players, former coaches that cover the entire NFL. We're about one football team hosted by a fan. Freaking love that. We've been in the top 70 for all sports. So not just football, all sports consistently. In a world right now, in a podcast environment where the trend is video, and we have video, right? We're on YouTube, but audio downloads are collectively down. Not for us. Our percentage of increase year over year, 2024 versus 2023, is bigger than the percentage of increase comparing 2023 to 2022. 6 years, no sight of a plateau. And I'm just so thankful. I'm so thankful. This podcast has changed my life. I've said that multiple times. It truly has. And let me say this. I'm not going anywhere. The Locked On Podcast Network is a great network. It's owned by Tegna. The leadership is phenomenal. They take great care of us. They care about their hosts. They take great care of us. I see the YouTube comments are like, oh, Joe's going to leave and go to ESPN. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I couldn't imagine being part of a better network that is a better fit for me. This is a great place to be. I'm really proud of the community that we're building around this podcast. You hear me talk about the Discord, the subtext, the Substack. Connecting with Bills Mafia makes this, it's like the cherry on top. I not only get to talk about this team that I love on a daily basis, but I get to interact with fans across the globe. It is so fun. And I say this because it's a great opportunity to reflect as we start year 7. But I want to share something kind of personal. 2024 was a great year for me. A great year. Welcomed our second daughter, my wife and I, Reese Elizabeth. She is, my God, she is amazing. Love her to death. I have 2 daughters now. We got our second one in April. And obviously, I just shared with you all the success that the podcast is having, right? It's been a great year for me. 2023 was not. 2023 was a very difficult year for me and my wife. Started off early in 2023. My wife had a miscarriage. That's hard. That's really hard. I know that a lot of people have experienced that. And my wife is fine with me sharing this because we think people should talk about it. 20% of pregnancies roughly end in a miscarriage. It's not that uncommon of a thing. And it's hard. It's sad for people. And on top of that, I resigned from my dream job in 2023. You guys know what I'm talking about. I had to resign. A very, very, very sad situation. So a miscarriage and resigning from a dream job. Tough. Really, really hard stuff in 2023. But look at 2024. We have Reese, and my professional career could not be in a better place. I share that not to boast, but I want to offer encouragement to anyone who needs it. It can be hard. If maybe you're having a hard season of life, and it can be hard in that moment to see the light. But keep showing up. Keep working on yourself. Extend love and gratitude every single chance that you get. Be a great steward of the opportunities that you have, and don't give up. And I hope that 2025 will be the best year of your life. I hope it'll be the best year of my life. And one thing I know for sure, I'll be talking Buffalo Bills football with you every single day here on Locked On Bills. So as always, I kindly ask that you share, subscribe, rate, and review. Have a great rest of your day. Happy New Year. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.